Jamaica celebrates its most mature, focused elections in history. Welcome to episode 107 of The Unequal Perspective. Hi, I'm Matt, and I'm joined by Sarah, and Rich is managing our soundboard.
Hi.
Today we're looking at something, well, really quite encouraging, actually. Observations from the recent September 3, 2025 general election campaign in Jamaica. Our insights, they come from the Jamaica Observer and the Jamaica Information Service, and both sources seem to describe this really interesting shift in the country's political talk. So our mission today is to try and understand for you what this shift could mean, for democracy, for voter engagement, and, well, the future of political conversation in Jamaica.
Yeah, and it really is noteworthy. Any move towards, let's say, maturity in political campaigning, it deserves a close look, doesn't it? Especially when you think about the history. I mean, for decades, election campaigns, not just in Jamaica but globally, have often relied heavily on, well, spectacle or emotion, sometimes division. So to see these sources pointing to a deliberate, observable shift towards, substance, policy, focusing on track records, that's genuinely significant. It touches on how governance is presented and maybe how it's actually perceived by people.
That's a perfect place to start. The Jamaica Observer, one of the sources we looked at, has often, talked about wanting politics to move beyond just hype, buffoonery, and political theater, as they put it. Now, okay, let's be fair. The recent campaign wasn't completely free of that stuff. The sources admit there was still some harlequinade and bitterness.
Some showmanship.
Right, some exaggerated antics maybe, and the usual political rivalry. But, and this is the key part, there was also a refreshing shift. It wasn't just wishful thinking. So what was this shift? Well, the sources highlight this clear focus from parties on the plans they had for the country's continued development. And for the JLP, the ruling party, specifically, it was like an outline of achievements, a resume of sorts, something they presented to voters to justify another term.
And what's fascinating here, I think, is this move away from just pure emotion, empty talk, towards concrete proposals and, importantly, a track record you can actually look at. This shift, substance over spectacle, it's just so crucial for a healthy democracy. It really is.
How so, specifically?
Well, when parties genuinely debate policies, verifiable achievements, it fundamentally empowers the voters, doesn't it? It lets you, the listener, move beyond just like gut feelings or charisma and make decisions based on what's actually been done and what's credibly being proposed for the future,
Right.
And that strengthens the whole democratic process. It helps foster a more informed, maybe more rational electorate. Elevates the whole conversation, really.
It certainly sounds like it should. But, I mean, is it really that simple? Even with plans and achievements laid out, aren't emotions still a huge factor, sometimes an irrational one, in how people vote?
Oh, absolutely.
How do parties handle that, even if they're shifting towards substance? And what does it mean for you, trying to, cut through the noise?
That's a really critical question. Emotion is always going to be part of human decisions, especially something as, well, personal as politics can feel. But what this shift suggests, perhaps, is that parties are increasingly seeing that while emotion can, mobilize people, get them out, it's substance that's more likely to persuade and sustain support, especially with a more, let's say, mature electorate.
So, for the voter?
For you, the voter, it means you can demand more. It means looking past the rally hype and really scrutinizing the actual proposals, and, crucially, the evidence. The past performance, it gives you more solid things to judge by.
That focus on plans and evidence naturally leads us to this idea of campaigning on your track record. The sources talk about presenting a report card to the people. The JLP apparently leaned heavily on its achievements. What's interesting, though, is that some people apparently criticize this. They sought to belittle the JLP's focus on its achievements, calling it a, quote, poor strategy.
That seems odd on the surface.
It does seem counterintuitive, right? Especially if you want new promises, big visions. But our sources, they push back hard on that. They basically argue that political parties in office that are unable to campaign on their record should not even attempt to compete in the first place. Strong words.
That's quite a statement.
And they use this really vivid analogy. Parties should give a report card to us, their employers, every 5 years.
Yeah.
That image just clicks, doesn't it? If you're hired to do a job.
Yeah. Show us what you've done.
Exactly. Your performance matters.
And thinking about that, it connects to the bigger picture. This isn't just, a smart campaign tactic. It's fundamental democratic accountability. When a party campaigns mainly on its record, it's saying, look, here's what we promised, more or less, and here's the proof of what we delivered or tried to deliver.
Right, being answerable.
Precisely, being answerable to the electorate. Governing really is about delivering on promises, showing tangible progress. If a party in power can't point to achievements, well, what exactly is it asking for another term for?
Good question.
This approach, it turns elections from just popularity contests into, ideally, evaluations of performance, competence. It forces parties to focus on actual governance, not just election time theater.
It makes the time between elections really count.
Exactly. There are real consequences for how you govern.
That is a powerful framework. But it makes me wonder, if this report card thing becomes the main focus, does it accidentally discourage, say, long-term projects?
That's a fair point.
The really ambitious stuff that might be politically risky or just won't show results in one 5-year term, stuff that could be transformative but takes time.
That's a very, very astute point. It's a tension you see in many democracies focused on election cycles. Accountability for the short to medium term is vital, yes. But an overemphasis on immediate, easily quantifiable results could, theoretically, lead to focusing on quick wins over maybe more important foundational generational projects.
So how do you balance that?
Well, hopefully, a mature electorate, one that's educated on how governing actually works, understands that difference. They'd know some things take longer. So the report card could include not just finished projects, but progress on long-term goals, strategic investments, planning for the future. It needs an intelligent reading both from the parties and the citizens.
Yeah, that makes sense. It definitely changes the dynamic. It asks you, the citizen, to feel more like an active participant, maybe, not just watching from the sidelines. It encourages you to really think about what you expect, not just big talk, but results, progress, and smart long-term thinking. And this brings us to the sort of bigger picture. The long-term vision for political discourse that the sources talk about, they suggest that elevating the conversation, accepting that, quote, democracy is best served when all views contend. That could lead to some really significant positive results. Specifically, they think it could mean a significant decrease in physical conflict in the name of politics.
Which is huge.
Huge. And also an increase in voter turnout. Less conflict, more engagement. That's a powerful vision for any democracy, right? Especially one that's seen political turbulence in the past.
Absolutely.
And the sources see a golden opportunity here for both major parties, the JLP and the PNP, to really instill that thinking and behavior among its supporters island-wide. But it's not just on the parties. They also point to the role of churches, community and civic groups, and educational institutions. Everyone has a part to play.
That vision immediately makes me think about the education needed to support it, because the sources offer some really important historical context here. They note that way back, particularly in the 1960s through to the 1970s, political education was regarded as important, part of development.
Right, I saw that.
But then, crucially, they say, somewhere along that journey, the focus shifted to political indoctrination.
Oof, that's a big difference.
A massive difference. And the argument is made that this very shift from real education to just, telling people what to think, partisan style, that could be directly linked to the apathy for governance and partisan behavior we are seeing today.
Wow.
If people are just taught what to think, maybe in an echo chamber, instead of how to think critically about complex political stuff, it undermines constructive engagement. It can lead to tuning out, or worse, that blind partisanship that fuels conflict.
So like a community group that used to have open debates just becomes a mouthpiece for one side.
Exactly, that kind of thing. So reversing that trend, rebuilding a culture of actual political education, not indoctrination, that seems absolutely key to achieving that vision of less conflict and more participation.
That contrast, education versus indoctrination, is really stark. It's kind of sobering to think how that historical shift might have shaped things today, moving away from that ideal where all views contend. So what practical steps then? Beyond just saying education, how can society actually move back towards critical thinking?
Well, it probably needs several things working together. You could look at curriculum reform in schools, teaching civics, critical analysis, how democratic debate works, not just facts about government.
Media literacy too, I guess.
Definitely. Media literacy campaigns are vital. helping people spot credible info versus propaganda, and maybe reestablishing those nonpartisan community forums the sources mentioned.
Yeah.
Places supported by churches, community groups, where respectful disagreement isn't just allowed, but actively encouraged. Seen as healthy for democracy, it's about building up our defenses against manipulation, really.
Those sound like real actions, which is good. And despite these big challenges, the sources are actually pretty optimistic. They state flatly, there is no problem that cannot be corrected.
That's hopeful.
It is, but they stress it needs the right ingredients. The will to resolve what's wrong, and that will needs to be strengthened by national consensus and collaboration. It's not just wishing, it's a collective effort. And they even point to leadership, saying, the new parliament would do the country a great deed to lead on this matter. A direct call for politicians to set the tone.
It's fascinating, this idea that political maturity isn't just about the parties, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's about an entire ecosystem, a national will. It highlights this collective responsibility. Politicians, yes, but also civic groups, churches, schools, individuals, citizens, everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that the recent campaign was seen as largely sober and issue-focused, well, that gives you some tangible proof, doesn't it? That this isn't just pie-in-the-sky thinking.
Right, shows it's possible.
It shows that if people are genuinely committed, the way politics is done can be elevated. But it needs sustained effort, right? Dialogue over shouting matches, collaboration over just fighting. Recognizing our shared future needs shared understanding.
Exactly. So what can you, listening now, take away from this vision for more mature politics? I think it's an invitation, really, to demand more from leaders, yes, but also to engage with the substance yourself, not just the spectacle, and maybe to actively contribute to building that national consensus in your own way. It reminds us that democracy, our collective future, isn't just shaped by the governors, but by the governed, by our will, our wisdom, our active participation in the conversation. So just to recap quickly, we've talked about these encouraging signs from Jamaica's recent election, a more mature, issue-focused campaign, a shift from spectacle to substance, the importance of campaigning on a record, that report card idea, and how all this could lead to less conflict, more voter engagement, and a healthier democracy built on national will.
And it leaves us with a big question, doesn't it? If political education did once drift towards indoctrination, what specific, actionable things can we all do today to really push that pendulum back towards critical thinking, real civic understanding for the next generation? Not just in schools, but everywhere public discourse happens. That's something for all of us to think about and maybe act on.
Thank you for joining us for this discussion. Until next time, keep thinking critically and keep engaging.